Good afternoon, and welcome to Milan. Milano is my city, the place where I was born. And you know it is a metropolis where COVID-19 has taken a very heavy toll for the last 2 years now. More than 6,000 people died in the city, 36,000 in the region. I really think that it is in the name of those who didn't manage to survive, as well as in the name of younger generations, that we now should really engage to have an impact and bring about change. We are in a huge global transition and facing the challenge, and this challenge is really enormous, gives us the chance to rebuild, or maybe to build, a more inclusive and sustainable world. And the two things go together, and it's very good. A good starting point, I think, is now to share the results of the Women's Forum Barometer, the new edition of the Barometer. The Barometer, as you probably know, concentrates on the difference between perception and reality related to female leadership in some key areas. These key areas are technologies, business, health, and climate change. I leave the floor right away to our two very distinguished panelists, Jennifer Haber and Audrey Tcherkoff. They will highlight the most interesting data and tendencies that the Barometer discovered in the 19 countries where the survey was accomplished. It's 19 countries because the 20th member of the G20 is the European Union, so the countries are 19. Just one thing, we won't be showing you slides, not a single one. This is something we decided together, and together with Chiara Corazza, that we want to say thank you for everything, because it was such a pleasure talking about female leadership. We want to say that we really love your style, the pride and the enthusiasm, the energy with which you and your team organize all these meetings. Really, thank you again. So we now have less than a quarter of an hour to go, and the floor goes first to Jennifer Haber. Jennifer Haber is Global Chief Client Officer, IPSOS.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and I'm really very, very proud and very happy to share the findings of the research that we did on behalf of the Women's Forum. We interviewed 9,500 people, adults, 18 years and older, both men and women, across the 19 countries that, as Barbara mentioned. And we conducted the interviews over a period of 4 weeks in July and August, so very, very recently. So let's dive into a helicopter view of the main findings of this study. First of all, one key point is that 2/3 of the people that answered our survey, that represent the population of the G20, agree that women have less chances than men to be successful in at least one of the following areas: to be successful in business, to be able to work in one of the most sought-after professions of the future, to be successful in STEM professions, like working in artificial intelligence, and last but not least, to be in good health. And indeed, as you said, Barbara, the COVID period took a very strong toll on women, more than on men. Women are more likely than men to suffer from fear of burnout, to suffer from anxiety, from depression, and they have often felt poorly supported. Their workload increased a lot, their mental load increased a lot, and they don't feel that their environment supported them enough. This is the result of worsening conditions that already pre-existed before the pandemic. And indeed, for example, women say that lack of time is the first obstacle for them not to take good care of their own health, in addition to financial constraints, of course, but lack of time is a big one. I'm sorry, I have a break. There's life expectancy. Life expectancy is longer for women. And this means that, of course, if they're not taking good care of their health, they will be living longer years in poor health. 1 in 3 women in the G20 consider that their country is not doing enough to address in an effective way the illnesses that are typical of women. So I would say some food for thought in terms of what we need to be doing to improve women's, also in terms of their health. Sustainability is another topic I wanted to talk about because it's a sweet spot for women. Respect of the environment, taking care of the environment, not only because women are more involved than men in looking after their household and so closer to some of these topics, or also taking care of the health of their families, but across all age groups, we see that women are more sensitive to these imperatives. And for example, they are very keen to see what can be done to reduce CO2 emissions. And they are also more likely to change their own behavior. So to do more recycling, to use less single-use plastic. So that's another important one. So what about the future? Thinking of the world as a whole, we are not optimistic at all. 48% of the people in the G20 think that we will never reach gender equality, which is a bit disheartening. And the half that think that we will get there think it will take 26 years on average to get there, so a very long time span. However, if we ask people about their own country, so not the world as a whole, but their own country, so something that is closer and maybe more controllable, then the time span gets a little bit shorter. So we say maybe 16 years, so something that we will probably see, which is a positive idea. And I would like to end with another sort of positive note. Again, this very high-level view of our results. And it is that there is a genuine openness in terms of what the people think that women can contribute to society, to businesses. 80% of the population and 75% of men say that society would be a better place if women had more opportunities, if they had the same opportunities as men, and that also we would have greater economic growth. Also, the same proportion of people, and again 75% of men, believe that businesses would benefit more from women in top managerial positions. So businesses would be able to be more innovative, to think more out of the box, to have a greater talent pool, to have a stronger corporate reputation. So lots of positive for businesses as well. So I guess that this leaves a bit of an open door and a positive note, and I'm sure that we all believe that individuals, businesses, and governments should take advantage of this to act and do things, and I'm sure Audrey will agree.
So, thank you, Jennifer. So we just have to keep this in mind. There's a vast majority of women and men together that think that female empowerment and leadership would be beneficial overall. So the awareness is there. We just have to keep pushing and pushing. And now the floor to Audrey Tcherkoff, and she is Managing Director, Women's Forum for the Economy and Society.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you for pronouncing well my name, which is not easy. So first of all, I'd like to say that I'm extremely happy to be here with you today and to be able to speak about the important work the Women's Forum is doing, and following obviously on the very inspiring footsteps of Chiara Corazza. So now, if we have a closer look at the situation, we are in 2021 still living in a world where any crisis, whether it's an economic crisis, a sanitary crisis, a political crisis, the women's rights are at stake. And as it was mentioned before, in a year, in 12 months, in 1 year of sanitary crisis, we've just lost 36 years in terms of gender equality. That means that we are going to have now, all of us here in this room, to wait 135 years to see what an equal world looks like, to see, you know, women and men reaching parity. I may as well tell you never. So now, as we were talking this morning together with the CEO that are part of the Women's Forum community, we can't fight inequalities without measurements, without metrics. And this is the very reason why this barometer is key. And when we first decided to launch that barometer, we've decided with IPSOS to really work on comparing perception versus reality, because it's the only way to have an honest and clear view of reality. So now, let's dive in together and let's have a look at where does the world stand in terms of gender inequality. So what did we learn? We learned that 35% of the G20 population think that in their country, gender equality will never be achieved. And then, on a global scale, we have 50%, I'm talking to you about half of the population of the G20, thinks that in the world, it's never going to happen. So you see the challenge we have? And I really want to make the Women's Forum mission to give those people hope. And we've also found that the very symbol of the gender inequality, which is the gender wage gap, is still, again in 2021, very prominent in those countries, 23%. So 23% might not like a lot to some people, but it is. First of all, it's a quarter. And second of all, we are talking about the richest country in the world that are meant to lead by example, right? And as we know, women are still a minority when it comes to senior management, occupying, again, only 1/4 of the senior position. So 2 things on that. First of all, the respondents, the citizens, think that this figure is even lower, lack of representation. Second, women are equally interested than men to reach the senior position. So that's also killing some of the stereotypes that we may still have. But clearly, even though women want to reach those senior management positions, they are not sitting at the decision table yet. So we still have a lot of work to do in terms of women empowerment to make sure women take the lead in business. And like I said to you before, the very important thing to keep in mind is that with Jennifer and Barbara here, we are talking to you about the wealthiest country on the planet. The G20 represents 2/3 of the world population. The G20 countries represent 85% of the global GDP and 75% of the international trade. So you can only imagine what's going on in the other countries. So I'm sure you, well, I hope you agree with me. Those figures are unacceptable. So it's time to act. And now the question is, what do we have in this barometer that we can work with? That's what I'm going to tell you right now. The results this year, and this is very interesting, show clearly that the population is perfectly aware of the dire situation when it comes to gender inequality. They know, they are aware. The information is there. We also know that the public opinion no longer needs to be swayed by the benefit of gender equality. They know it works, and as Barbara said, Jennifer said, people understand now that the more women are going to be involved at the decision table, the better and the more sustainable our world will be. And I'm talking to you here about 84% of the G20 population saying, it is a key priority for me. Gender equality is a key priority for me. So now the public also shares our belief that women should lead the fight against climate change. And 83% of respondents want women to be appointed at key positions when it comes to climate action. First, because women are the first victim of climate change, so they are very well aware of the impact of climate change, and they have, therefore, to be involved in the solutions. And they are also as we mentioned, the first one to change their behavior towards a more sustainable consumption. But it's a fact. Women are reaching faster the decision table when we implement mandatory measures, like quotas. And countries that have adopted coercive measures have drastically and significantly and rapidly narrowed their gender gap. So what we've decided to do with this barometer, we've decided to test the people's willingness to see strict measures implemented in their own country. So we went to the people and we've asked them, would you support in your country the introduction of legislation to ensure women an equal access to social and economic capital? Then we went further. We've asked those same people, would you support publishing the names of companies with a gender gap? We decided to go even further. We've asked people, would you support imposing high fines on those very same companies? And I have to say that we didn't expect those results. 79 to 86 people, 86% of the respondents said yes. So now that we are armed with this data, my message to the government and to the private sector is that we should no longer be scared of implementing strong measures. And here at the Women's Forum, we don't want to wait 135 years to see what an equal world looks like. That's not what people expect from us, and that's not what we are going to do. And right here, right now, what we really want to hear is that we are not going to wait.
Thank you. Thank you, really. Our time is up already, and but read the barometer. You have it. There's lots to read and think about, full of slides, of course. It's very interesting. I think we have another gap now. The awareness is there, but we have to implement what people say they are convinced of, and we should try to contribute to this implementation. Otherwise, we will have reached another gap between women and men. So thank you very much. Enjoy the meetings. Enjoy these 2 days in Milan.